changing things up a bit, here's a game in the SU-100M1, the Soviet Tier 7 tank destroyer from the new tree that leads to the 263. This is a match with Risk and TA, Chiri and a Tiger respectively. And what I'm going to do is what I generally do in TDs on this map, which is head down the west. So this TD doesn't really have a lot of armor, and it doesn't really have a giant gun, but it has quite good DPM, decent camo, and it's very mobile. It's built on the chassis of a T-34, I think? I'm pretty sure. It's either a T-34 or a T-44, I can't recall which. So you can see I stopped here and kind of gave up a lot of shots that could have done damage on the enemy just to tell this guy how bad he was. It was kind of a stupid move on my part, but when somebody like that starts bad-mouthing the rest of their team, they really deserve to be put in their place. So you can see him camping in the one line, exactly like he told the rest of our team not to. Incredible. So, get my first shot into the Warcrying Panther. The gun on this tank is the LB1, the same gun that the T-44 gets. Quite a good gun. Does have a little trouble penning in Tier 9 games, but in Tier 7 and 8 games it's quite sufficient. So you can see our Leopard doesn't understand the meaning of passive scouting, and gets his dumbass blown up. And nobody's scouting now, because we've got two medium tanks cowering behind TVs and two heavy tanks that are just stupid. At this point the ELC gets lit, but the Warcrying's also lit, so I take shots at him. You can see that LB1 doesn't have much trouble with even the Panther's turret, and now I go for shots on the exposed Churchill. The Churchill presents a little more difficult of a target simply because of its armor layout. I think some of these shots we're hitting, it's like the armoured beak on the front with flat plate and just skipping straight off. So I try and get a couple more shots on him, but fruitlessly he gets cleaned up by RE-25. So our T-150 is suiciding out down the road into the open, completely oblivious to the fact that there's plenty of enemies hiding down there, and certainly TDs. I move up because nobody will spot for me, and find some things. Then the ELC comes blazing in from the left side. As soon as I notice that, I should have moved. The ELC rams me, nobody shoots it. Watch this. Hands are three-quarters, or three-quarters, ignoring it. I have to ammo rack the damn thing. Nobody else would shoot it. So then I'm presented with all these tanks looking straight at me, and I don't have the armor to bounce them. I try and get what shots I can. I figure at this point I'm dead, so I may as well just do what I can before the inevitable explosion. But thankfully only half of them are actually paying attention to me, and so I managed to back out and survive. Just pure luck. RE-25 also bails out. So now we're left with myself's A-25 and our completely worthless Chinokai, who you can see reversing there to try and hide behind the E-25. Bitching out my team, because rightly so, none of the idiots shot the ELC. They let it actually come in and ram me and then light all of us for all the enemy TDs. I know I'm harping on about this a bit, but if a scout tank does something like that and you know you're lit for TDs, kill the fucking scout as soon as you can and move. Really, I should have done it, but I kind of expected my idiot teammates to know to shoot a light tank. I was wrong. So the doghouse turret ARL, not a huge threat, but he can still pen me. Thankfully he goes down. TA probably saved my life there. I managed to snapshot the KV-1, and then suddenly my flank is mostly clear. All that's left is the Tiger and the TD sitting in back. So I reverse up a bit to try and get myself back in camo, as opposed to being simply in cover. You can see the Chinokai's been hiding in that bush all game. Completely worthless. Not spotting, not shooting, not doing anything. So I position myself in a bush and begin telling him to scout, because I will be damned if I'm going to let some fucking complete shitter sit there and do that. He decides he doesn't want to scout, and no amount of me ping spamming the map is going to persuade him otherwise. So KV-1 comes up, the E25 gets it before I can. Thankfully I'm not lit. And my platoon mates are handling the enemy tanks over in east fairly well. Tog comes up, and I managed to get a shell into it somehow, even though that looked like it shouldn't really have hit. Tiger comes up and exposes himself broadside to both myself and the E25, and that is the end of him. See, he doesn't know what to do. I think we may have actually killed his engine or his driver, he's moving so slowly, and he's done. So we've managed to turn this match around, thanks in no small part to my platoon and the E25, and I decide, fuck you Chinokai, you're not getting away with that shit. Commissar's services were needed. I've noticed this happening a lot though. Shit players will hide all game as far back away from the enemy as possible. They'll fire their gun a couple times into the air to pretend they did something, and then after the game's already won, they'll rush out and try and do damage at the last minute. I've seen an M48 do the same thing. He hid in the A7 square on Malinovka and just did nothing all game. So when I see that kind of shit, I'm not standing for it. I ask our E25 to scout up since he has better camo and may actually survive a hit. I move up a little to position myself better, and there is the last one. So I get a quick snapshot into him, and the E25 begins engaging too, and then my second shot nails him. And the game is won despite a shaky start and a lot of pubbies who didn't want to do damage. I think this is my best damage, or just best game in general in the SU-100M1 to date. I can't recall for certain though. It's not a bad TD. It's got really bad gun depression, and like I said, its armor won't stop much, but it is fast. So if you're more of a medium tank driver like me, it's worth playing, I think. The SU-101 that follows it is very much the same, no gun depression, weak armor, but very, very fast with a very high DPM gun. Obviously the end goal of this is to get the Object 263, which I really enjoy. I'm not really much of a TD player, but if I can play my TDs like they're turretless mediums almost, I'm happy to play them. Things like the JT or the JP100 or even the 268 to an extent don't appeal to me.